Hey, good morning. This is Emotionally Intelligent Living Straight Talk with Steve. Today, I want to talk about conversations, something we take for granted. I'm having a conversation with you right now, and I hope you're watching and listening. Um, but there's a skill to conversations that most people don't think about. The vast majority of people don't understand conversational intelligence, which is a great book that was written by Judith Glaser that helps us understand how our words, our tone, our emotions enter into the conversations with us. So, again, these are unscripted. I may bounce around a little bit. That's a little bit of who I am, but I want to hit some high points here on why this is so important. Why should you worry about having good conversations? Well, it kind of makes sense, right? You want other people to have quality conversations with you, so we should do the same for other people. Here's where I run into this a lot as far as a challenge. The higher up you go in an organization, a lot of times, the more demands on your time, the more pressure, the more you're trying to get a lot of different things done. And a lot of times that's through other people. That's kind of what leadership is. Um, Life is the same way. Maybe you lead your family at home, and you probably do. You lead yourself. Well, the higher up in organizations, what I see is the less time people have to be intentional about their conversations. But you know what? That's a choice. Um, it starts to become more command and control than collaborative. And that's when we lose people. That's when we get disengagement. It's when, and it's why in the workplace, the recent Gallup State of the Global Workplace study said in the United States, our employee engagement is about 30%. Technically, I think it's 31%, but that's 3 out of 10 employees that are actively engaged in the job, in the effort, in the team, in serving people. So that's not good. And that number in the United States is much better than it is globally. It's in the 20% area, the 20 plus percent area globally. So why do I bring that into emotionally intelligent living? Because at the heart of so many of our challenges is a lack of attention to having quality conversations. If you want to get something done through other people, you can push or you can pull. And the reality of that is pushing doesn't work that well with other people. Nobody likes to be pushed into doing something, but they would much rather be led or pulled into something that's interesting, that's more productive, that's more collaborative. And I'm not saying if you're a leader that you have to throw away all of the command and control stuff and just be real soft and fuzzy all the time. That's not what I'm saying. But it is in essence a skill of when you have conversations with people, there are really two things you're trying to do. One is you're trying to connect well with them. The second thing you're trying to do is build trust. From those two things, think of those as deposits, like you're making a deposit in a bank account. So the more deposits of connection and trust you make, the more influence that you have. And influence is the currency of getting things done. So when we have our conversations, the first thing I want you to think about is what are you bringing into the conversation? What is your emotional environment? Number one. Why is that important first? Because we process emotionally before we process rationally. So if you're turned off, if you're frustrated, angry, if there's something emotionally going on that creates a dissonance with the person you're having a conversation with, you're going to shut that person down. You're not going to listen. You may be polite and sit there and quote, listen to them, but you're not really listening. You're not actively listening. You're not trying to figure out what are they thinking? What are they feeling? What is their perspective on what they're talking to me about? You're just kind of going to be pushing that away and not paying attention. Your mind may go to another place. And that's a lost opportunity. Every time that we have a conversation with someone, it's an opportunity to move things into a better direction for better outcomes, or the opposite. We can move them in a worse direction for worse outcomes. So as we think about this, success lives in conversation, which is kind of the focus of what I want to share today, that is really the truth. The quality of our conversations will yield the outcomes that we get, the results that we get. So the first thing to think about is, what are you emotionally bringing into the conversation with? We have these things in our brains called mirror neurons, just like you're looking in a mirror. And they pick up the emotions of other people. That's our emotional radar. So the more that we bring into the conversation that is emotionally dissonant, the less quality the conversation is going to be. People will feel when you're stressed, when you're pressured, when you're angry, frustrated. Now, I'm not saying don't bring some of that into a conversation if it is important to get a point across to the other person. Let me share a story with you that I think you'll probably find funny. When I was a very, very young sales manager, I had an older salesperson, probably 25 years, my senior, and he just had his own way of doing things. And so he would go and he would do his thing every month. And he did this one thing that was out of policy. It was just not the way that we wanted things done. And so the first month I brought him in and I said, hey, this thing that you're doing, you really need to stop that, because it's out of policy. It isn't really the way we want to show up for our customers. And he said, sure, okay, no problem. I get it. I'll take care of it. And I thought, great, this is awesome, right? And so next month, guess what? Same thing. And so I bring him in at the end of the next month and I say, hey, I thought we talked about this and I thought we agreed that you were not going to do this again. Yeah, I know things just got crazy. I promise I'll fix that. Not a big deal. I'll make it work. I said, okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. Guess what? Yeah, you guessed it. The next month, same exact behavior, right? Same exact approach. And so I bring him back in and I go, help me understand what's going on here. I thought we were communicating and I thought we had an agreement, but I don't see any change. And really, this needs to change. And he goes, you're right. And I'm really sorry about that. And I'll take it seriously this time and all of that. So he walks out of the office, my office. And so a few minutes later, I walk out of my office. I look over at my administrative assistant and she's just shaking her head at me. And I go, what's going on? And she said, you don't get it, do you? And I, of course, young sales manager, I'm going, of course I get it. No, I had no idea. And so she said, he walked out of here. Do you know what he said to me when he walked out? He said, it must not have been that important because you weren't mad or angry. And I thought, of course I'm angry about his behavior. He keeps doing the same thing over and over again. But what I realized was there is an appropriate time to bring emotions in a professional manner into that kind of conversation. But there's also many times when we should not be bringing some of our emotions into a conversation. So that story was to give you an idea that, yeah, there's times in conversations when bringing the emotional element in is fine. It's okay as long as we do it appropriately. But many times we enter into conversations not stopping to assess our current emotional state. And then what happens is all of that just kind of bleeds over into the conversation. And we may send mixed signals because of that. I may be saying positive things to somebody, but what they're sensing from me is anger and frustration. So that's mixed signals, right? We have to prepare for our conversations, and it doesn't take that long. It's just a few practices. Maybe it's be aware of your emotional state. If it's not where you want it to be for a given conversation, stop, breathe, reset your mindset and your emotional state, go into that conversation with the emotions that you want to have. I think that's so critical. Another thing that we can think of when we consider success living in our conversations is, are we truly listening to the other person to understand their emotional drivers, their perspective, the things that they're trying to understand or get across to us? Or are we sitting there just waiting for our time to talk? Are we thinking about the next thing we're going to say while they're talking? I can tell you in my life as a salesperson, which of course is today as well, I've been a salesperson all my life. Even when I was a fundraiser, I was a salesperson. So the reality of that is you miss so many important things when you're not actively listening. And the conversation may go in a much better direction if you'll listen more than you talk. So practice active listening is another way. That's also very good for relationships because you're practicing empathy, you're practicing social skills, very important competencies of emotional intelligence as you're listening. And that also can give you insight into the other person and where they're coming from that could help you make better decisions and help you move forward. So I guess the key word here around success living in conversation is be very, very intentional about your conversational approach. Now, I'm not saying script everything. That you and I both know that's not going to work very well. But what we can do is have a framework that we enter into conversations with that help guide us to have the best conversations so that we can get the best outcomes. I don't know of very many situations in life where a person does not rely on other people for their success, for their satisfaction, for their ability to get things done. There just isn't that much. Even if you're in a drive-through somewhere, the way that you treat those people will make a difference in the service that you get many times. Maybe not, but many times I think it does. It has for me at least. So when we think about this success living in conversation, be intentional, be thoughtful about what you're bringing into the conversation, and understand the conversation is a two-way street. I mean, even if you're a leader redirecting one of your employees or staff members because something hasn't gone right and you need something to change, you can still approach it in a conversational way that engages them instead of disengaging them. I'm not saying that we don't hold people accountable, including ourselves, but remember, words have power. So I want to close this out just with a thought. Take a few seconds before every conversation to do an emotional check in, to understand what you'd like to get out of that conversation, and to think about who is this other person or people in this conversation? How can I best serve them? How can I best converse with them so that we can have the best outcome together? I hope that helps. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you soon.